Back now with my panel. Was addressing Donald Trump's plan, part of which was for charter schools for the African American community.
And school choice.
And school choice.
Right. Let me just bring this back around to this point one more time. Right. The number of people who believe negative stereotypes about African Americans as polled by Reuters, the percentage of those who are Donald Trump supporters is so far out of line compared to those who support any of the other candidates of which they compared them to, that there is really hard to not say that there is not a large portion of his supporters who hold these views. And here's the problem with that, right? Mark Twain once said, no man can be comfortable without his own approval. People who hold these beliefs have to make themselves believe that they don't hold them so that they can be comfortable with their own bigotry, with their own intolerance, right? And that creates the situation that allows them to say that it is okay that I have this. The thing about the truth is the truth does not hide. The truth is not afraid. The truth is not quiet. The truth roars. And when people hear that roar, they are startled when they are not used to hearing that truth.
I'd like to address this because I took a look at that Reuters poll, and I also found, I have it right here, that a large percentage of Mrs. Clinton's supporters also held those negative views that you and I don't share. What's interesting in addition is that other polls have found that African Americans have strongly negative views about whites. So my view is, instead of pointing a finger at blame at any of these groups, that's not going to solve the problem. Blaming one group for having a negative view about another isn't going to solve the problem. We have to start talking to one another without this kind of hostility and accusations of racism. And when I see Mrs. Clinton campaigning across the country, she's stoking this racial animosity, telling African American audiences that they are victims of systemic racism. That's not the answer.
But that is the truth. Whether or not it's the answer and whether or not it's the truth is different things. What you're saying is you want her to start talking as if she's not talking with hostility, and what you're basically saying is you want her to start talking as if she's not going to tell the truth. And the truth of the matter is that Donald Trump, even in that poll that's in your hand right now, his numbers stick out further on all of those metrics.
That's true, they do.
Exactly.
But it's a problem.
And stick out
it's
more.
A big problem.
It's a problem with white people having anti-black biases in general in America. America has an anti-black. American whites have an anti-black bias issue, and more of those people are supporting Donald Trump than any other candidate that Reuters polled. And what candidates have to determine is whether or not they're going to allow those people to support them in spite of them condemning that behavior, or whether or not, as Donald Trump is doing, they are going to pitch their message to those people, or they're going to cozy up to white supremacists, and whether or not his surrogates are going to come on television and make excuses for that.
And I would say that I'd like to see our candidates, I'd like to see our candidates address all voters, regardless of their race, with the same messages: economic growth, stronger defense, a united America. And when I see Mrs. Clinton address an African American audience and tell them that she wants whites to show more humility, something she doesn't say to a white audience, that troubles me. That's not the right way to be.
But you realize that, when it comes to race in America and the history of this country, black it's not always the opposite. It's not always equal. Like you said, blacks had negative perceptions of whites. Some of that comes from a history of racism.
But I'd like to strive for a colorblind society rather than stoking these divisions.
But is it
economics, for example? We all want this economy.
Is a colorblind society, I mean, Hillary, realistic? Because when I look at you, I see a white woman. I'm not blind. When people look at me, they see a man of color. I want to see the differences in people, but to acknowledge those differences as positives and not negatives. A colorblind society is that what we really want here?
Well, I do think we want a society of opportunity. And I think that Betsy's missing Charles's point, which is that you want a candidate to talk about our better angels. You do want a candidate who is saying, despite how you may feel about society, I am going to call out racism. I'm going to call out homophobia. I'm going to call out religious discrimination. And if you want to support me, that's fine, but I'm not going to support your views. And I think that's the piece that Hillary Clinton is saying. And so what she's done this week with Donald Trump, look, inartfully said no question. And Hillary Clinton has a very strong history of actually bringing people together. As Betsy knows, and it frustrated her at the time when Hillary Clinton was senator of New York, she had high approval ratings among Republicans and independents, not just among Democrats, because she has been someone who works across the aisle. She has been somebody who knows how to bring people together.
Yeah.
And when she goes out there and says, listen, I'm not going to campaign like Donald Trump is. I am not going to divide people. I am going to say we have to come together. That's what we need to hear. But this week, like, look, I'm a lesbian. When Donald Trump this week goes to Phyllis Schlafly's funeral and deifies her and the bigotry that she spouted for so many years to cheers and cheers and cheers in his audiences, that to me is divisive. That's deplorable.
Yeah.
That's what Hillary Clinton was talking
about. John, quickly, because I have to get to the break. I'm way over.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
In Europe, they have a parliamentary system where all the nuts have their own parties. Here we have a two-party system. So there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of kooky beliefs that get behind both candidates. You could probably go to a Hillary Clinton rally and find people who think that George W. Bush took down the towers on 9/11 and is responsible for James Byrd's death and vaccines don't work. We're not voting on the candidate supporters. We're voting on the candidates, and we shouldn't lose sight of that.
Yeah.
Charles's point is that Trump is pushing those people,
I can make that
encouraging
point,
that
Hillary.
behavior.
You guys have a lot of nuts that like
He is
Hillary,
hateful,
too.
and Donald Trump is deplorable. And if you're supporting Donald Trump or you make excuses for Donald Trump, that makes you part of being deplorable.
We will continue this in the next hour, so make sure you tune in. This entire panel will be back. Thank you, everyone. Betsy McCaughey, stay with me. We're going to continue when we come right back. Is Donald Trump as charitable as he says?